The scientific acknowledgement of our limited dimensional observance. Say that 5 times fast. What I mean by that is that it is within the scientific realm of reasonableness that how we view the world is limited by our 3-dimensional understanding and perception of it. And when I say dimensions, I don't mean like parallel dimensions, like there's an infinite number of me out there doing different things, making different choices. I'm not talking about that. I mean the facets by which we perceive reality. Left, right, side to side, up, down, back, forward. Superstring theory, we won't go into this, implies that there could be as many as 10 dimensions, most of which would be totally imperceptible to us. There's a higher, greater realm that we cannot see or perceive. No religion required.
You've been bad. Have mercy.
So what does that mean? Why does that matter? It matters because science is limited by the perceptible 3-dimensional physical world. It also confirms that higher dimensions can interact with lower dimensions, and the lower dimensions being entirely unaware of the higher dimensions. Higher dimensions can interact and perceive lower dimensions, but lower dimensions cannot interact and perceive higher dimensions. What am I talking about? Why does this matter? I hear you, I know. I'm getting to a point. A 1-dimensional object gives length. Think on your graphing calculator in school, this is your x-axis. If this was sentient, if your x-axis was sentient, it would have no perception of up or down, and certainly not back and forward. Now your second dimension is your y-axis, your up and down. Now you can merge these dimensions to make a plane. A good representation of this would be like a piece of paper. I know that there's still technically a little bit of 3rd dimension in there, but for the sake of illustration, a piece of paper. Then we have the 3rd dimension. That's us, that's where we live in. We have up, down, left, right, and we have back and forward, baby. We can perceive and interact with all 3 dimensions. As 3-dimensional beings, we can perceive that paper from afar. We can walk around the paper, we can look from under the paper, we can look from above the paper, and the paper would have no perception of us. That is, unless we interact with it directly. The 4th dimension is time. We can perceive it, we can even measure it to an extent, but we cannot control it. We can't speed it up or slow it down, and we can't move to different points on it. It's perceptible, it's measurable, but it's not interactable. If we were to take a 3-dimensional ball and pass it through that paper, that 2-dimensional plane, how would the paper perceive this 3-dimensional ball? From the paper's point of view, as the ball were to go through the paper, it would start as a dot, a little ring would go around it until it hit the diameter of the ball, and then it would get slower and slower to a dot until it fully passed through. This is how a paper would perceive a 3-dimensional object. Similarly, if it's within the scientific realm of reasonableness that higher dimensions exist, they could perceive us, even interact with us, and we would have no perception of them around us. So if God is a creator and possible cause of the beginning of the physical world, but remains outside of our perceived dimensions, as would have to be necessary if he created it, he could be all around us and near us without us ever being aware of it. He could interact with us, but our perception of that would only be within our physical 3-dimensional world. We cannot perceive God as he's higher dimensional, but we can perceive God's influence if and when he decides to interact with us. Now, is the scientific theory of higher dimensions proof of God? No. But does it lend credence to the possibility of a higher being or beings that can perceive us and exist outside of our physical realm of understanding while simultaneously interacting with us? Absolutely.
Would you like to become even stronger?